Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Medeek Wall plugin. My name is Nathaniel P. Wilkerson, and today I wanted to show you guys a few more features with regards to these stairs and the balusters, and specifically cable railings. So what I've done is I've just basically created this stairs, and in the interest of time, I don't want to go through the whole configuration process of creating kind of this modern stair look, because I think I've already covered that enough in the previous videos. But what I do want to show you is how do we actually generate a handrail system that looks something like this, which is a typical cable railing system. So what I've done is I'm going to start just with a kind of your standard baluster and post system, and we'll take it from here and try to update this particular run of stairs and make it so it looks like the one on the top. So this is handrail system number 2. So let's go ahead and open up that edit menu, and we'll just roll all the way down to the bottom. As you can see, when you've got with the landing, you've got 2 runs of stairs, and you have the handrail options and the post options and the baluster options. So that's for the top set, those 3 menus. And then when you start the handrail 2 options, handrail 2 post options, and baluster 2 options, those are for the bottom run of stairs. Okay, so let's start here. And the first thing you'll notice is with these, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to start with the post. And we're going to go change this from a 3.5 inch post to we want to go kind of a steel post, right? So we're going to go a 2 inch post, and I'm going to change this to a material I created. I call black steel. It's just one of the custom materials that I've created. I'm going to go ahead and update that. Okay, and you'll notice on the different literature and stuff for these cable railing systems and glass railing systems, at least what I've noticed is they usually have like a 1 inch little base. And I don't show that here, by the way. I just show the post, but they usually have like a flange welded to the post, which you can then connect into your big tread here. So that usually has I think it's like a 4x4 base. I'm not entirely sure, but anyways, the point is they tell you, in the literature, you want to stay 1 inch away from the edge. And so in order to do that, then that means we need to be 2 inches. And so I've adjusted the extension for the top and bottom. You'll notice here it's 2 and negative 2.75. And I've done that specifically so that with a 2 inch post, you are exactly 2 inches away from the edge of this tread, right? The front of the nosing of that tread. So I've gone ahead and done that already, but I'm just pointing that out because you probably will want to adjust that. And the way to do that is adjusting the extension top and extension bottom. Okay, so next thing's next. Same thing here in the X direction. We want to get that to 2 inches, and right now I think I've got the handrail clearance set to 1. So we're just going to bump this out by another 3/4 of an inch. And if I remember right, that should put us 2 and 2 clearance. Okay, so that gets that set up. All right. So let's go ahead and go back down to the posts. I think everything is kind of where we want it for now. But I do want to point out that I've added one additional parameter here, which is the bottom offset. Okay, so you'll notice here with posts that the ones on the top, they will obviously be sitting on the landing generally. So I have it set to they'll go to the landing. And sometimes, like with volutes and other, different terminations for these posts, you end up with the post actually being off of the stairs down on the ground here on the floor. So that's why I have it, typically set up so it's right at the floor height. However, there are situations where something like this, where you've got it sitting on top of a tread and you don't want it extending through the tread. And so that's what this bottom offset's all about. So I know that my height of that tread is exactly 7.5. You might have to measure it, but I just know that offhand. And so then I can bump that up a little bit to make it so it doesn't pass through the tread. All right, so that is an additional option, and you'll notice it's also, up here. If you go up here, it's up here as well. So one additional parameter just to allow you to further finesse these posts and handrail systems. Okay, so then next, let's go and start talking about the balusters. All right, so previously, I think in the previous video, I had it set up where you would change to glass to set up for glass balusters instead of these regular pickets. What I've done though is I've gone ahead and added a baluster type as well as a baluster height. Okay, so the baluster height, this parameter or option only comes into play where you have intermediate cable or glass posts or basically the balusters for those systems. So right now, with it being just a regular baluster type like this, that height does not come into play. It basically just terminates, it trims the balusters so they go up to the rail and then they land on the stairs, on the treads. So it doesn't come into play. Now, let's go ahead and change this to glass. Okay, go ahead and hit update on that. Give it a second. And right, so what you've got is that. Now, that looks kind of funny, obviously. Okay, so in this particular case, you know, so if we want to get rid of all those balusters, we can set our baluster spacing to 0, right? And that will, by the way, that works for glass and the cable as well. Okay, so that will basically eliminate all the balusters and it'll just draw one piece of glass. Okay, now if we decide to go, say, let's just go 48 inches spacing here just to test it out. Okay, now you noticed that our balusters, well, we've got only one because our spacing is way too large. The one thing you need to realize, though, is that what you typically want to do with your spacing when you're dealing with these, this sort of situations, you want to be in multiples of the stair tread depth. So in this case, if I'm correct, we are a 10-inch tread depth. Okay, it's somewhere here. Yeah, there's our tread depth, 10 inches. Okay, so what you want to do, and you'll notice this, like let's say we put 40 in, right, which is 4 times 10. Okay, so now you'll see that we've got, it nicely lines up, so they'll all land on the same spot on each tread, right? So like for instance, like if we put in 10 here for our baluster spacing, that should put a baluster on each tread, right? And by the way, I'm adjusting where exactly that baluster lands by this offset. Okay, so the offset doesn't offset the glass, it just offsets the placement of the baluster. Now, I want to make these the same size as these posts, so I'm going to go ahead and change that baluster size, and I'm also going to change it to the steel as well, just to keep it uniform. Go ahead and update again. Okay, so now you can see we've got ourselves, I've actually got that calculated 0.25 inches so that it nicely lands 2 inches and 2 inches, right? But you can see what happens is when you put the spacing in there, it will leave that gap for the glass, and we usually have brackets that connect. It doesn't actually show the brackets. And then what we want to do now, of course, is probably, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So like if we go 20 inches here on the spacing, that's probably too much, but it just turns out it works out if we do 30 inches, right? Because you'll notice how this all works out. Okay, so now we've got equal distance between our, we've got 2 treads, 2 treads, 2 treads. So that looks about right. Okay, so now and that just takes a little bit of, experimentation to figure out what exactly is the right spacing. Granted, if you don't have an even number of stair treads, or an odd number, it will kind of mess up, how that spacing goes. And you'll notice here with this particular run of stairs, same sort of things going on. Now we've got basically, we don't have the right number of treads to make an even, because if we end up with this post down here, well, now this section's more narrow than the section up here. So it's just one of those things, right? It just depends how the number of treads works out. Anyways, so that shows you how you can set up glass. And again, if you don't want any intermediate posts, you could just set the spacing to 0. But typically you want your baluster spacing to be a multiple of your tread depth. So again, if it's 10, then you want 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. All right. Last thing about these balusters is you have this baluster height. which actually is really they're not balusters at this point. They're intermediate posts, they call them. So as you can see, there's a gap there. It's not framed up to the rail, and that is by design. Typically, if you look at the way these are constructed, they have like a little bracket that allows a pivot there, and then it bolts right to the handrail. But I'm not showing all that hardware because it's just far too detailed to add into the model. So, but you may want to fine tune and adjust this, because if your handrail height is not where exactly you want it, and I'm not calculating this, by the way, so you can fine tune it. So I'm going to bump. See, I bumped that up, so that's obviously too high. And let's go 38. I'm just kind of showing you guys how you can do this. I already have set it to 39 because I knew that was working out just right, kind of. But yeah, so 39, maybe 39.25. Then this is totally configurable, so you can adjust it to whatever height you want underneath that handrail. Again, this only applies to balusters that are glass or cable. So the other variations will not affect the height. Will not affect those. Okay, so that's glass. Okay, so now let's go ahead and quickly switch over to cable and hit update on that. Okay, so now we've got cable. All right. Really, the intermediate posts don't change with cable or glass. You'll notice that nothing changed there. The only difference is it got rid of the glass, put the cables in, or rods, whatever you want to call them. I've had people ask me about, okay, well, what about the spacing of the rods and also the dimension of the cable itself? So I could put that in here, and I may do that eventually, but I figured most people are going to probably stick with kind of the same, parameter there overall. So if you do want to adjust that, you can easily do that just by going into the global settings. I've exposed those parameters here. And if we go into the stairs, you'll notice here under cable railing options, we have cable railing spacing and cable railing diameter. So let's go ahead and change that to 5, maybe change that to 2.5, hit save settings. Okay, and then I'm just going to regen this stairwell. Okay, so you can see now we've got a tighter spacing, and our cables are much thinner than they were. Right, they're 1/4 inch. Also, you'll notice too, the cables themselves are not round. I just figured, what, it's more, whether they're round or whether they're a square, which they are, perfect square. I mean, visually, because they're so thin, it really doesn't make much difference. And the bottom line is when you go square like this, it makes just a lot more lightweight, right? There's not so many polygons in your model, so I think it's just better that way. All right, so that's pretty much it. I think, that gives you the option for modern stairs, the cable and the glass, and it gives you now the ability where you can put intermediate posts, whereas before with the glass you only had, just pure glass, but you can still do that by setting your spacing to 0. And I hope this will help you guys complete any of your modern stair projects. So again, thank you for your feedback, and we will talk to you guys later.